there, and welcome back to the HQ. Today, we're going to be reacting to Prohibition, Oversimplified. Now, I don't really know a whole lot about Prohibition. I know Oversimplified really goes into surprising amounts of detail for something that's super oversimplified, but it's interesting to get into something of his that isn't a war. Because so far, I've watched his videos on World War I, World War II, and the Cold War, and the Emu War. So we're going to be getting something that's a little less war-based. And we'll probably be watching some of those at some point too. So let's jump in and learn about the Prohibition, shall we?
This video was made possible by Honey.
Fuck
Click the
Honey.
link below to save money on your online shopping. And
No,
also,
I don't think I
limited
will.
edition Al Capone pins on sale now. Get 'em
Oh.
quick before they sell out. Link in the description down below. Good morning, honey. What's for breakfast? The usual. 2 caskets of rum, a mug of hard cider, and a full bottle of wine.
That
oh boy.
doesn't sound
I'm running
healthy.
late. I'll have to take it with me. Don't forget your lunch. It's a 6-pack of beer, a flask of whiskey, 6 shots of tequila, and as a special treat, a banana. Oh, gee whiz. I'm gonna be smashed today.
That's
Enjoy
not
your day
healthy.
of operating sharp, dangerous farm equipment. I can't believe this is an acceptable way to live. God bless
It's not healthy at
America.
all.
Okay, gotta go.
Oh.
I love my life.
Ah, Lord.
America, the land of beauty.
As someone who comes from a family with, let's just say addictive personalities, I can already, I'm quite familiar with the effects of alcohol, and I want no part of it. I don't drink alcohol for a reason. You won't catch me dead drinking alcohol.
Beautiful strip malls, top-class infrastructure, and wonderful urban sprawl. Ah, yes. Beautiful America.
Good
But what's
old
the most American thing
USA.
you can think of? The Statue of Liberty? Mount Rushmore? A crazy lady in a mobility scooter yelling at a pigeon? Or
How about illegal regime changes? Topical.
what if I told you the answer is alcohol? That's right.
Also
When the Puritans
true.
arrived on America's shores, they brought a ship packed with beer. George Washington provided his men with a daily cup of whiskey. Andrew Jackson's inauguration party left the White House so trashed that everybody had to be ordered outside. Frederick Douglass said whiskey made him feel like a president. Me too, Frederick. Me too. Americans drink at breakfast. Doctors prescribed their patients hard liquor. In the 19th century, Americans drank 3 times as much as their modern-day counterparts. That's a
God
lot of whiskey.
damn.
Hey, Jerry, how's that report coming along? Already done, sir. I've also organized your paperwork, watered your flowers, and been a father figure to your children. Wait a minute. What's that smell? Have you been drinking at work? No, sir, I would never. Well, why not? Everyone else is doing it, but I got all my work done. You're fired!
God damn.
Americans drink at work. They drink at barn raisings, baptisms, and public hangings. Heavy
Yeah, everybody just drank. Everybody just getting smashed. Getting tipsy.
drinking was so normal that it was as American as apple pie. Hi, everyone. My name's Ron, and I'm an alcoholic. Get over yourself, Ron. We're all alcoholics. But more and more Americans began to wonder whether all of this truly was a normal way to live. Were Americans drinking
probably
perhaps
not.
a little
Probably.
too much? Well, one group in
Probably.
particular thought the answer to that was yes. You know him, you love him. Woman. Oh, crap. Woman. Wrong.
Woman. Oh
Hang
no.
on. We just want to talk. Woman talking in public? That's outrageous. Come on, Fred. You've got 2 kids and a wife at home. Yet here you are spending your entire paycheck on booze. And you, Dr. Spanky, you were on the cusp of discovering time travel. But what did you discover instead? The sweet, sweet joys of whiskey. That's right. Alcohol. It's destroying our family.
Yeah, because who needs time travel when you can get crunk? Huh? Who needs it?
Families, our jobs, and our homes. She's right. She's right. Hang on, men. Don't let them get to you. This saloon is our safe space where our wives and children can't annoy us with reality, where we're free to be real men. She's right. She's right. I am a man. And what is it real men
I was about.
do?
Oh
Take
yeah,
care
what
of
the?
their families.
Yeah.
I don't know what she's talking about. Do you take care of
I take care of my family. I'm the woman of the house, though. I take care of my family. I work 50-hour-a-week job. I don't touch the alcohols. I pay my mortgage. I pay my bills. I pay my groceries. I am peak woman.
your family? No. We drink beer, we shoot guns, and we mud wrestle.
I still do 2 of those things, but I still provide for my family. Don't touch alcohol, people. At least do so in moderation.
As America's heavy drinking ruined more and more lives, moral resistance began to arise, and
Hmm.
women were at the forefront, taking matters into their own hands at a time when women doing just about anything was shocking. They'd had
Yeah.
enough of being victim to their husband's heavy drinking,
Hmm.
and they were going to do something unprecedented. You're
Oh,
going to what? I'm going to protest.
good.
Oh, sweetie, women can't protest.
And then they protest.
Starting in Ohio, before spreading nationwide, women began a crusade against alcohol. They marched through towns and cities, singing hymns, gathering outside saloons, and praying on their knees. Women praying was so terrifying that in some towns, schools were shut and business stagnated.
God
On one
damn.
occasion, firemen were called out to hose down the dangerous praying women. On another, the owner of a beer garden reportedly held a cannon outside and threatened to reduce the savage women to dust.
Why does a random owner of a beer garden have a giant cannon? Also, glad to see that the American police state's response to peaceful protests hasn't changed to immediately trying to like hose and gun them down.
Nevertheless, they persisted. They formed the WCTU in 1874, and they organized. They set up homes for inebriate women. They installed water fountains in public parks. They wrote textbooks for school children that contained some interesting claims about drinking alcohol. Here's little Timmy. Uh-oh. Looks like Timmy's gonna have his first drink. He's taking a small sip of whiskey, and Timmy has spontaneously combusted. The end. The woman's effort.
I don't think that's how that works. I don't think that's how that works. You really could have educated a little bit better. I mean, you could just tell the truth about alcohol. Like, be like, oh, it feels good for a little bit, but then it starts to break your body down and messes up your internal or well, they probably didn't know all of that back then. Because let's be frank, science wasn't the best 100 years ago. But they could just say, oh, it'll turn you into a shell of your former self.
Weren't in vain. In small towns across America, drugstores agreed to stop fulfilling prescriptions for alcohol. Men committed themselves to giving up drink. Inspired by the women's moral fervor, some saloon owners closed their doors. The Women's Crusade and other temperance movements were forcing people to reconsider alcohol's role in society, and more people began to side with the growing temperance movement. Many states had even begun enacting their own dry laws that restricted the sale and use of alcohol. One of them was Kansas, where
Yeah, in my state, up until recently, Sunday was still a dry day where you couldn't buy alcohol. Like all the time, like it was Sundays where you just couldn't buy alcohol in my state. I don't know how many other states have these kinds of laws, and I know it was recently lifted. Like granted, in my state, it's still like certain times where you can't buy alcohol, but now you can at least buy it on Sundays. But yeah, it's interesting how even today, many dry laws still persist.
alcohol had been outlawed since 1881. Despite this, many illegal saloons remained open, and authorities had done just about nothing to stop them. One woman, disgusted by what she saw, decided she would take the law into her own hands. And not just any woman, a terrifying, hatchet-wielding, sweet old lady named Carrie Nation. Armed with her trusty hatchet and a bag of what she called smashers, she traveled from town to town visiting saloons. But she wasn't there to get smashed. She was there to smash. The men could do nothing but cower as sweet little Carrie hulked out and tore the place to shreds. She went to Kiowa
Valid.
and smashy smashed. Wichita, smashy smash.
Valid.
Smashy smash. On a
Smashy
couple of
smashy.
occasions, she was arrested, but each time they were like, okay Carrie, we're gonna let you go so long as you promise to be a good girl and not smash up any more saloons, okay? Screw you, pig!
Ooh,
Yeah, I think she's gonna be alright.
Carrie Nation said a cab. Also, considering the fact that these businesses are operating illegally, it's not like they can sue for reimbursement because they're selling illegal goods and services.
Smash, smash, smash. Carrie's tactics shocked the other members of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, but she assured them, and this is a quote, "Ladies, you do not know how much joy you will have until you smash, smash, smash." Carrie became a household name, and she hoped her unusual tactics would spread across the
We
country.
stand
Unfortunately,
our
many
smashy
of the
we
women's movements eventually
stand
slowed down.
our smashy
Why?
Carrie.
Well, because of this kind of thing. Thelma, I ripped my pants again. Ugh, well, you'll have to sew them yourself because I'm going out protesting. What? I don't know how to sew. What if I burn the house down and get eaten by alligators? What? Don't be
That's
stupid,
incredibly
bitch. Look,
specific.
I've gotta go. Call me stupid? She's the one who's stupid. Hey, Thelma! Look who's stupid now! See, while the women were out protesting, there
God
was nobody to
damn.
do the cooking and cleaning and being seen and not heard, and they gradually had to return to their duties at home. But where the women had got the ball rolling,
Because men just don't want to learn. They don't want to learn to cook and clean and do things around the house because they spent all their time getting smashed.
a new movement was about to take that ball all the way to Washington, D.C. I'm
Ooh.
talking about the Anti-Saloon League. The Anti-Saloon League was a political pressure group run by a very sweet-looking old man. But don't let that deceive you. This guy was an evil genius. While the women's movements were interested in a whole range of issues, Wayne Wheeler and the Anti-Saloon League only cared about enemy number one, Mr. Alcohol. And as a result, they were extremely effective. They were able to exploit the fears of the American people. And I mean everyone's fears.
Yeah,
Here's how they did it.
that's typically how you get things done. I mean, that's how, like, why do you think it's like, yeah, like political like groups like this typically are pretty good at just spreading all kinds of propaganda about pretty much any subject because they can always like take what they're protesting against and then tie it back to you and your problems and make it a problem that you care about, despite the fact that it shouldn't have anything to do with you, and yet it somehow still affects you in some way.
Hello, sir. Welcome to the Liberal Progressive Rally. Why don't you introduce yourself? Well, I'm Patty, and I'm an immigrant from Ireland. And tell me, Patty, do you drink? Oh, yes. I drink a lot. See, folks, people like Patty come here looking for a better life, only to end up drunk in the gutter. Don't worry, sir. We're gonna help you. Hey, man, you're doing great. I just need you for one more thing. Hey, Christian conservatives. This is Patty. He's a dirty Catholic Irish immigrant who's come to destroy America with his alcohol-fueled debauchery! Workers were told alcohol was a capitalist ploy to keep them.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. I mean, look at today with some things like immigration. Like, they're using everything to blame it on immigration. Like, oh, like your wages are bad because of the immigrants. When it's actually because of the fact that we have a continuously one-sided economy controlled by billionaires that depress wages by hiring undocumented immigrants so that way they can pay them pennies on the dollar because the fact that who's going to stop them. And people seem to blame the immigrants who were just trying to find work to feed their families and not on the companies that are exploiting those people. Because the real solution to the problem, document the immigrants and take away the ability for these billion-dollar corpos to exploit people and reinforce like healthy wage growth that keeps up with inflation. But of course, nobody wants to hear any real solutions. Instead, they just want to listen to the super simple solution of brown people bad. Because, nobody wants to put in the actual work to change for a better, stronger society. Nobody wants to do that.
Subjugated. Factory owners were told alcohol was making their irresponsible workers lazy. The black
Yep.
community was warned alcohol was hindering its progress, while racists were warned alcohol would turn black men into brutes. In
Yep,
one of the most
that's how it
confusing
goes.
eras of American politics, totally opposing groups found themselves agreeing on at least one thing. Alcohol was bad. The Anti-Saloon League also made great
That's how
use
it
of
goes.
propaganda, something prohibitionists have been doing for decades. Take this specimen, for example, that warns what will happen to you if you start drinking. Let's see. First you take a drink, you get a little rowdy.
See, what's it say?
Warns what will happen to you if you start drinking.
Step 1, a glass with a friend. Step 2, a glass to keep the cold out. Step 3, a glass too much. Step 4, drunk and riotous. Step 5, the summit attained jolly companions, a confirmed drunkard. 6, poverty and disease. 7, forsaken by friends. 8, desperation and crime. 9, death by suicide. That is one hell That's one hell of a propaganda
Let's
piece.
see. First, you take a drink, you get a little rowdy. Okay. You make some new friends. Nice.
Hmm.
Then you become homeless. You turn to crime. And uh, Uh oh. But the most effective
Uh-oh.
tactic Wheeler used to force prohibition on America was
Goodness.
pressure politics. In any election he could, Wheeler very successfully rounded up support against any politician who was in favor of alcohol. In Ohio alone, he had 70 state representatives and the popular Republican governor ousted from office and replaced with
Jeez.
prohibitionists. Suddenly, every politician in America was afraid of Wayne Wheeler. Even those who enjoyed alcohol in private began pretending to be against it in public. Alcohol is
Yep.
delicious.
That's how it goes.
Malicious. Sorry, Wayne. I'm really drunk right now. Then it really
Yep, that's pretty much how it goes. If a massive political figure is super popular, people will just turn on a dime and shift to supporting them because that's the popular thing to do and that's what's going to get you elected. I mean, if you need any kind of example, see the political hemisphere before the 2016 election and see it after the 2016 election. And you'll see a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Because people did not like the current president, or even then, President elect Donald Trump. People didn't like him on both sides. But then suddenly, because of the fact that he won the presidency, all these people turned on a dime and suddenly started espousing him and how great he was, despite the fact that they were saying how much of a piece of shit he was 6 months earlier. It's because they don't actually believe the bullshit they're spewing, but they know that it's popular. So they're going to say that they like him and believe what he's doing because that's the popular sentiment at the time. And that's just how politics are played.
hit the fan in 1917 when America found itself fighting in the First World War against Germany.
Yep.
Anti-German sentiment exploded. Sauerkraut became liberty cabbage. German measles became liberty measles. And Dachshunds became the embodiment of evil. See, America? You've always been this way. The biggest brewers in America were German, and Wheeler saw to it that drinking alcohol became akin to pro-German treason. The German brewers desperately tried to fight back, creating their own propaganda, presenting beer as a healthy beverage, one that you could even give to your kids. As you can imagine, it didn't go down well. President Wilson instituted some temporary wartime prohibition measures to save grain for food, and with many in the country now in support of prohibition, all that was left was to make it law. One problem was that taxes on alcohol made up nearly 40% of the US government's annual revenue, and the government wasn't just about to give that up. No problem. The Anti-Saloon League helped lobby for the creation of a new income tax on the American people, and just like that, the government was no longer reliant on alcohol. Prohibition was finally introduced to Congress in 1913.
So we have this schmuck in Prohibition to blame for income taxes. Huh. Okay.
Not just as a law, but a constitutional amendment. In 1917, as the House held their final vote on the Prohibition Amendment, Wheeler was watching from the gallery. You spineless cowards. I know half of you drink, yet here you are bowing down to Ned Flanders up there. Look at him, like he's some kind of Caesar. Ugh, don't be so dramatic. I obviously don't think I'm Caesar. Now release the lion. In the end, Prohibition passed the House easily, 282 votes to 128, and the states ratified the new amendment by 1919. America, a nation obsessed with liberty and freedom, had just voluntarily given up its private right to choose whether or not to drink alcohol. We did it, folks.
Yep.
We fixed everything. America will be perfect forever. But you just dissolved America's 5th largest industry and lost tens of thousands of jobs for us immigrants. No, you idiot. You don't get it. We helped you. Idiot. Ugh, I could really go for a beer. Oh, no. Immediately after
That is literally how it went.
Prohibition went into effect, alcohol consumption in America decreased as Americans followed the law and tried not drinking. Man, if we're gonna be law-abiding good boys, we need something else to fill the dark, lonely void that delicious beer once did. Well, how about we crack open a nice cold can of water? Hell yeah. Toss it over.
Oh,
Nah,
that is a good sound.
Let's try knitting.
I love the sound of a
filling
can
the dark void
cracking
at all.
open.
Wanna fly some kites? Screw it. Let's go get some illegal beer. While it seemed like many Americans supported Prohibition, after the law went into effect, it seemed
Yep.
like just as many Americans intended to keep on drinking, and they would
Yep.
go on to find a variety
That's
of
how
ways
it
to break
happens.
the new law. Here's a question for you. Do you like breaking the law? Well, shame on you. Or do you like saving money when you shop online?
Oh,
Then you should use free.
I don't think so.
This $10 and stole the rest 2 clicks.
I don't like
So thank
honey,
you.
and I don't support
And
honey.
procuring pints. Pretty soon after the new law went into effect, the failures of Prohibition were already beginning.
Normally, I am a ethical reactor, and I watch the ads. But honey is bullshit, and honey is an asshole, and I will not support the honey.
To rear their ugly heads. For starters, the details of the new Prohibition law, written by none other than Wayne Wheeler himself,
Of
turned out to
course,
be
he was
more
right in
draconian
there.
than expected. Many Prohibition supporters only wanted to outlaw hard liquor and hoped beer would remain legal, but the Volstead Act outlawed anything over 0.5%. That would make
Goodness.
Liberty Cabbage illegal. Secondly,
Jesus.
the new law was full of loopholes that Americans very quickly began to exploit. For example, while the sale
Of
and
course.
manufacture of liquor was illegal, drinking it wasn't. And you could also keep any alcohol you had before the law went into effect.
How do you wind up with that kind of situation? Where it's like you illegalize the sale and manufacture of it, but not the consumption. Okay.
So many private clubs hoarded huge amounts of alcohol that saw them through the entire Prohibition period. Whiskey intended for medicinal purposes
Jesus.
was also allowed, and doctors basically became bartenders. It looked as though a full-on epidemic
God
had broken out,
damn.
as there was a sudden surge in prescriptions for whiskey. Sacramental wines used by churches and synagogues were also permitted. Orders for communion wine suspiciously skyrocketed by millions of gallons. And as rabbis had access to religious wine, suddenly everyone was becoming a rabbi. You had Rabbi Pat O'Leary,
Jesus.
Rabbi LL Cool J, Rabbi Fluffy. But don't worry,
Oh.
I'm sure all these definitely legitimate religious figures couldn't possibly be selling wine in the back alley after mass.
Totally.
Definitely nothing strange going on here.
Totally.
These products also hit the shelves in stores, such as Vine Glow, a brick of dehydrated grape juice. Itself
Oh?
not alcoholic, and therefore perfectly legal. But the packaging did contain a strangely specific warning. After dissolving the brick in a gallon of water, do not place the liquid in a jug in the cupboard for 20 days, because then it would turn into wine. I'll take 1,000.
Oh.
Yes.
How very specific with your non-instructions. How very specific indeed.
Sir. Now, at this point, I want you to think back for me, if you will, to the year 2005. You're the coolest kid around, and you convince your parents to rent the greatest movie of all time from your local Blockbuster. But the movie starts with a strange message. Something about not downloading
You wouldn't
a car.
download a
You
car.
immediately disregard that and hop on Kazaa to download
Oh,
the
yeah.
greatest song of all time. And in the process, drain your dad's bank account with copious amounts of ransomware. You were breaking the law, you bad boy or girl. But did anyone come to arrest you?
Nope.
No. That's my point.
Yeah. If you want to see more about that, you should watch my reaction to the Nakey Jakey video, illegally downloading music, all about the history of illegal music downloading software like Napster and Kazaa and LimeWire and things like that. What did you use when you were a kid? I used LimeWire. Tell me down in the comments below what you used to illegally download music, because you know you did. You know you did.
If no one's enforcing a law while everyone's breaking it, is it really a law? And
Yeah,
so it
pretty
was
much.
with Prohibition.
That's how it went.
See, the conservative-led governments of the decade were also the kind of people who believed in small government spending. So they
Yep.
passed a law that would be extremely difficult to enforce, but also didn't want to spend any of the money required to enforce it. The newly created Bureau
that's
of
pretty much how it
Prohibition
went.
only had 1,500 agents to cover the entire country.
Yeah, because like it's always funny whenever like a political party that believes in small government and spending as little as possible on the government also pass like huge, sweeping, like countrywide laws that are basically impossible to enforce. Because how are you supposed to enforce a federal law like that with no spending for that specific jurisdiction? I'm sure, yeah, like in this day and age, states pick up the slack. But at the same time, yeah, it just doesn't make any sense, does it?
That's one agent for every 70,666 Americans in a massive country with 12,000 miles of coastline and one gigantic land border with Canada. Good
Yep.
luck, schmuckos. And all these clever little loopholes people were using to score illegal booze were only just the beginning. America was about to devolve into alcohol-fueled criminal chaos. By
Yep.
outlawing it, Prohibition had made alcohol a precious commodity, and millions of Americans would become outlaws as they found a variety of ways to score illegal booze. For example, many Americans began making their own liquor. Illegal stills from making moonshine were found by Prohibition agents from the hills of Kentucky and the caves of Arizona to parking lots
Wow,
in major
everywhere.
cities, and even in the homes of Prohibition-supporting politicians. Oh,
Of
come on now,
course.
fellas, I voted for Prohibition. I'm not gonna have an illegal still. What's this? That's my son, Freddie. Say hi, Freddie. Sir, this is obviously an illegal still. How dare you? Hey, what's this in the bathtub? That's bath water. Why does it taste like alcohol? Here's a better question. Why are you tasting my bathwater, weirdo? Come on, Freddy. Let's get away from these perverts. To discourage moonshining, the government began adding extra toxins to many of the products moonshiners were using, which resulted in many cases of severe illness and death. But alcohol wasn't just being made at home.
Wow.
Along
Okay.
America's vast coastlines, rum runners smuggled alcohol into the country by sea. A floating supermarket known as Rum
So they're just slipping toxins and things into the products that people use to make alcohol, knowing damn well those products probably get used for other things as well, and just killing thousands. God, they really do institute a death penalty for anything in this country, don't they? Hmm. Yeah, that would explain why ethyl alcohol exists. That would explain it. Yeah, yeah. Not notifying the public about like something like that does track. That definitely tracks.
Row extended along the east coast just beyond America's maritime limit, and bootleggers frequently sailed out in small boats to pick up shipments of booze. These bootleggers could then be found selling their illegal products everywhere, even in the holes of Congress. Wow, Pop. One day, I want to work here. Well, son, if you work hard and never give up, one day even you could be a massive hypocrite. Even
Yep.
President Harding was known to serve his cabinet bootlegged whiskey, and some bootleggers were so
God
successful
damn.
they became bazillionaires, such as Roy Olmsted, an ex-cop who became one of the biggest employers in the Seattle area from smuggling booze. Unfortunately,
Wow.
all of his whiskey came from Canada. Yuck. All of this criminality was being made possible by
Canadian
copious amounts
booze.
of corruption. Across the country, armies of government officials were persuaded to turn a blind eye. Bootleggers became so rich, it was no problem to stuff a couple $1,000s into the front pocket of the police chief, or the mayor, or their disapproving mother, and some cops were
Yep.
getting almost as rich as the bootleggers.
Oh yeah. 1920s America was really corrupted. I tell you that much. Like, I think that's the time when LA Noire takes place. I've seen gameplay of LA Noire, where it's like an open world like GTA, but you're playing as like a police detective and playing through its story. But like seeing how corrupt the LAPD is and that point in time, it really makes sense.
Alright, men, everyone gather in. I've received word that one of you has been taking bribes from bootleggers. Any ideas who? Kevin, perhaps. Got any thoughts? No, sir. Many police officers came from the same communities that drank a lot, and they weren't about to arrest their own granddads for knocking back some homemade gin. But all this
Yep.
isn't to say there was no enforcement. Plenty of government officials were doing their best to enforce the new laws, and some unlucky individuals received very harsh penalties, such as a Michigan mother who was sentenced to life in prison for small-scale moonshining. Cases like
Jesus.
these were widely reported in the media and only served to make
Goodness.
Prohibition even more unpopular.
They'll put anybody away for life for anything. You know, except for people who who force themselves onto others. Then if they're a 20-something white boy with their whole life ahead of them, then they get a slap on the wrist because they did an oopsie.
But not just that. The media also loved to cover the exploits of the most famous bootleggers, turning
Yep.
them into national icons. One of the biggest bootleggers was a man named George Remus. Originally a lawyer, he watched as his bootlegger clients paid off enormous fines like it was nothing, and proclaimed bootlegging's the business for me. But unlike most bootleggers, Remus had big brain, and he came up with a pretty clever system. See, there were millions of gallons of liquor produced before Prohibition that were sitting in distillery warehouses, and it could only be sold with government permission to drug companies. So Remus set up his own drug company and bought all the liquor. Then he set up his own transport company to transport the liquor. And then he would send his own men out with guns to intercept his own transport vehicles. And this would happen. Hey man, this is a stick-up. Oh no, please don't hurt me. I won't hesitate to shoot. Please, I have a wife and kids. Hand over all the whiskey, Fatty. Hey, Fatty isn't in the script, you jerk! After stealing all the whiskey from himself, he could then sell it for $10. The perfect
quote
crime.
unquote stealing it.
Remus was eventually caught by a goody two-shoes Prohibition director in Indiana who wouldn't take Remus's bribes, and the government found Remus guilty of violating the Volstead Act 3,000 times.
3,000 times.
Remus sat in prison. His wife promised to take care of all of his money. And by take care of his money, she meant have an affair with a Prohibition agent, sell off everything Remus owned, and file for divorce.
Wow.
When Remus finally got out and found his big fancy mansion empty with his wife gone, he reportedly broke down in tears. A few months later, during their divorce trial, he spotted his wife in a car in Cincinnati. Remus hopped in a cab and asked the driver to run her off the road. The driver was like, okay. Then Remus got out of the cab and shot his wife dead. He immediately handed himself into the police. And his next trial, this time for murder, became a national sensation. Remus defended himself, claiming insanity, occasionally carrying out skillful questioning, occasionally crying in the corner. But the nation felt bad for him. His wife had screwed him over, and so when after just 19
He gets off, doesn't he?
minutes of deliberation, the jury returned and declared him not guilty. The court erupted into celebration. And just to remind you, this guy bluntly admitted to murdering his wife. The American justice system.
So this dude, he got sent to prison for 2 years for the illegal sale of alcohol. His wife left him, took all the money he made from his illegal business, you know, instead of the money being repoed by the government like it probably should have been. And then he got off for killing his wife. The American justice system indeed.
As alcohol poured into
Chef's
the nation,
kiss.
a lot of it was going to a new type of drinking establishment that had been booming in popularity. A secret drinking establishment.
Speakeasies.
So secret that from the outside, they often look like ordinary shops or homes. So secret that you usually needed a password to get in. So secret that everybody knew about them.
Yep.
Speakeasies. And once you were in, the party went all night long. Scantily clad flappers, snake ladies, jazz. It was a roaring time to be alive.
The roaring
Some
20s, baby.
even posted reviews of these illegal clubs, and bribes galore kept the party going. It seemed like half the police officers and federal agents in cities like New York were receiving kickbacks from speakeasy owners.
Oh,
Hey,
L.A.
What the Kevin
L.A.
Costner's
was
going
one
on here?
hell of a corruption
Officer O'Hannity,
case.
taking bribes. Why am I not surprised? Prohibition director Simmons? For shame. Mom?
Everybody's
what would
in
Dad
there.
Say? Ask him yourself. Dad would say, quit being such a wet blanket and let Daddy earn his tips. Anytime a speakeasy was shut down by authorities, it seemed like 3 more would just pop up elsewhere. And some neighborhoods were so full of them that one resident began hanging a sign to try to keep partygoers from constantly knocking on her door. It really seemed like the new
It probably
laws
didn't
regarding
work.
alcohol
They were
in
too
some
drunk to
places
read.
were simply being ignored. And one Prohibition agent who traveled the country liked to see which city was the most defiant by timing how long it took for him to be offered a beer after he arrived. His winner? New Orleans.
That does track. New Orleans would absolutely be the first one to offer a
Where a
drink.
cab driver offered him a drink after just 35 seconds. Bravo! Many voices in Congress were already speaking out against Prohibition and its failures. To display how ridiculous the whole thing was, one Republican congressman gathered the media to all come and watch him drink a homemade beer. When he asked a passing police officer if he'd like to arrest him, the officer said no. Hey Wayne, is all this what you had in mind?
Jesus.
I thought we were going to make the country better, but it almost seems like it's worse.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Alcohol consumption is down. Well, that may be true in your small town world, but it says here drinking in some areas is up, as are arrests for public intoxication, drunk driving, and incidents of liver cirrhosis. The general chaos has turned America into a nation of criminals with no respect for the law, and all these attempts at enforcement are just costing the economy valuable money and eating up judicial time and resources. Release the lines.
Yeah, like, at that point, you really have to understand the fact that whenever it comes to a law like this, a law that nobody likes, nobody wants, and nobody supports, you're basically creating a country where it becomes a country of lawlessness where you have this whole idea that, oh, the law doesn't matter because there's this one specific law that nobody likes and nobody follows it. And therefore, everybody's drinking alcohol still and getting crunk. So why follow the other laws then? There's no point. And that's basically how we have situations in the 20s where everything was basically controlled by organized crime.
The social change and corruption that Wheeler and the Anti-Saloon League had been so eager to prevent, in the cities at least, was surging. See, when something's legal, you can usually regulate and control it. But
Yep.
make that thing illegal, and often anything becomes fair game.
Yep.
Legal drinking age, gone. Mandatory closing hours for clubs and bars, gone.
Yep.
Other unspoken sociocultural rules surrounding alcohol, gone, gone, gone. In speakeasies, different genders and ethnicities were beginning to mingle in a way they hadn't done before. The Roaring Twenties saw a monumental shift in culture. Not least of all because now men and women could flirt in public without being damned for eternity. An outraged Wayne Wheeler did his best to make sure that any
Like in some ways, Prohibition definitely like accelerated societal growth. And also it accelerated the growth of organized crime.
anyone breaking the law was punished. He had even stricter legislation put in place in New York. But all this did was clog up the justice system with petty drinking violations, and judges began letting everyone off with light fines, so the judges could get back to dealing with things that actually mattered. Things like murder. And there was plenty of murder.
Oh,
because
yeah.
bootleggers and moonshiners were one thing, but Prohibition had given another kind of criminal an opportunity to make a fortune.
Yep.
Mobsters and gangsters. Hey,
Yep.
Fat Tony. Big news. Hey, Fat Joey. What's up? I just got word from Fat Louie here that the government's outlawing alcohol. You know what that means.
Fat
That
everybody.
means we're gonna be rich. Quick, call Fat Polly and let's go hijack a liquor truck now. All right. Hang on, let me tell my wife first. Hey, Fat Susan! No pizza for Fat Joey tonight, capiche? Stop calling me Fat Susan! Come on. Rival gangs began to battle in America's cities, raiding each other's transports, assassinating rivals, and trying to take control of their city's illicit booze trade.
Yep.
Every city
That's
had
how
its
it
top
went.
Dog. Detroit had the Purple Gang. New England had Charles King Solomon. But no city was as infamous for gang violence and murder
Oh, yeah.
as Chicago. The city had multiple
Chicago.
gang factions, and at first, they agreed to stay in their own neighborhoods. But the thing about criminals is that they're criminals, and
Yeah.
the agreements inevitably broke down.
That
One
is
day,
how
the
it be.
Italian Southside gang was walking along the street when this happened. And he was like, I think I'm done with this, and left for New York, leaving his crime empire to his chief enforcer, none other than Al Capone. Having
Al
been knifed in the
Capone,
face in
baby.
his younger years, Capone earned himself the name Scarface. Although interestingly, he hated that nickname and preferred to be called Snorky.
What kind of nickname is Snorky? Where does that come from? Like, how does he get a nickname like Snorky?
Snorky was ruthless, just like any other gang leader in America. But what set him apart from others, the reason he's become synonymous with 1920s gang warfare, is this. Most other gang leaders would try to keep a low profile because, they're killing and murdering and stuff.
Yeah.
But Capone lived for the fame and kept an extremely high public profile,
Yeah.
frequently speaking with the media about his exploits and presenting himself as a gracious host.
Yeah, that's what set Al Capone apart from all these other gangsters. It's the fact that he was so public. The fact that, he, set himself up as, this public figure that could do no wrong. And it was, this really charismatic, figure. It's like, in Marvel, it's the same thing with if you've ever watched the Netflix Daredevil series, it's with Wilson Fisk, him being the kingpin of crime, but he's also this public figure that's super charismatic and speaks. It's how in Born Again, it's how this guy who has a verifiable criminal record and verifiably murdered people got elected to be mayor of New York. Which is incredibly unrealistic because of the fact that there's no way in hell that a conservative would ever be elected mayor of New York. Not in this social political climate. But yeah.
Providing Chicago with good times. No need to thank me, fellas. I just provide the city with a valuable commodity while doing away with the competition. You mean you murder people? Whoa, who said anything about murder? I just,
Yeah.
force my rivals underground. When you do the thing with the hands, it seems like you're talking about murder. Whoa, look at you with the brains. No, I just help people retire from life. So murder.
Hmm.
Whoa! Al Snorky Capone was somewhat of an
Whoa!
enigma, brutal in how he dealt with enemies. But in
Yeah.
front of the camera, he was all smiles. One day, he'd be ordering hit after hit. The next, he'd be signing autographs in Wrigley Field. One day,
Yep,
he'd be
that
bludgeoning members of
is
his
Al
own gang with a
Capone.
baseball bat for conspiring against him. The next, he'd be playing Santa at a nearby parochial school. And no murder could ever be traced back to him. Just like every other criminal, he stuffed the pockets of city officials with cold, hard cash. And any who did try to oppose him sometimes found themselves being thrown down the steps of City Hall in broad daylight. Problem solved. The public couldn't get enough of Capone. He quickly became a household name as people romanticized the gang life he lived. And this became a source of concern for the people at the very top.
Yeah, it's like that's what happens whenever you have like these figures. Like even if they're doing all these like criminal acts, if you're charismatic enough, you could probably get away with it. It's like it's the same reason why you had like during the 2016 election, you had Donald Trump go out and say that he could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and people would still vote for him. It's because he had the sauce. He's charismatic. Like you don't have to like him, but you have to admit the fact that at least back then he was a charismatic person. And he was right. People did vote for him.
President Hoover? What is it now, Miles? I'm busy. Well, it's just that there's a lot of crime, sir. Crime? How long's that been happening? Well, since the dawn of man, sir. What? Would you like me to blame it on the Democrats again? No, Miles, I want you to blame it on squirrels. Yes, the Democrats. Now stop wasting my time. Since having a crime lord controlling public officials and winning the hearts of the people.
That is how the
probably wasn't a good
politics
thing.
go.
Hoover personally ordered that something be done about this Capone fellow. But before he knew it, President Hoover was also dealing with another major problem. You know him. You love him. Woman. The Prohibition era had been going on for nearly a decade, and anyone with a brain could see that it
Woman,
really
once
wasn't going very
again.
well. One person with a brain was Pauline Sabin, an extremely influential and rich woman who served on the Republican National Committee, fundraised for Republican presidents, and had a secret wine room in her giant mansion. She initially supported
Of course she
Prohibition, but was
did.
now disgusted at the chaos it had created, and she began
Yeah.
a new women's movement, this time not for Prohibition, but against it. Being the extremely influential woman she was, her new organization gained nearly 1.5 million members within 2 years, 5 times that of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. She hated that the WCTU claimed to speak for all women, and she began calling for the repeal of the 18th Amendment. President Hoover, I helped fund your campaign, and now I want you to end Prohibition. Miles, what is it I say when I'm not going to do anything? You'll look into it, sir. Oh yeah, that's right.
Hmm.
Pauline? I'll look into it. Sabin gave speeches on the steps of Congress and helped start a growing push among the American
That's
people
usually how it
against
goes.
Prohibition. But Hoover, a prohibitionist himself, wasn't budging. Then, on the 14th of February 1929, something happened that shocked the nation.
Oh.
Men thought to be working for Al
Oh, wait,
Capone
this
tricked
is
some Irish mobsters into meeting
February
him at a
14th.
garage
That's
in
St.
Chicago, thinking
St.
they were
Valentine's Day
there to purchase
Massacre.
hijacked whiskey.
I've heard about
Instead,
this.
The mobsters were lined up against the wall by men dressed as police, and they were shot.
Hmm.
The Valentine's Day Massacre had
Yeah,
people
St.
outraged.
Valentine's Day
It was cruel
Massacre.
and almost felt like American mobsters had finally crossed a line. People were sick of the violence, and in part, they blamed Prohibition for helping to create it. The pressure on Hoover to do something was steadily increasing.
And yet he did
Fine.
nothing?
Miles, I want you to put a report together to see if this whole thing is working. You mean the thing where mobsters are becoming increasingly powerful and massacring each other in the streets and everyone is disregarding the law and half our public officials are corrupt and taking bribes? That thing? Yeah. I want to know if it's
Yeah.
working or not, Miles. Stop
Clearly it's
wasting
not
my
working.
time. Hoover continued to drag his feet on Prohibition, but after
That
the
sounds like
Valentine's Day
Hoover.
Massacre, he was still determined to do one thing. He wanted Al Capone in prison. Since Capone had been so careful, the FBI were having a hard time charging him with anything, but eventually, they got him. Capone,
Yep.
we know you're supplying Chicago with alcohol.
And of course, they did get him on the alcohol or the murder or anything like that.
And you've been involved in
They got him
countless
something on
murders.
far more
Whoa, look at
nefarious.
you with the crazy talk. I ain't done none of that stuff. But you're rich, right? You're damn right I am. And so where'd all the money come from, Capone? All right, I'll let you in on a little secret, but you gotta promise not to tell anyone, okay? I don't pay my taxes. Whoa! For all of his murder, the IRS finally got Capone on tax evasion. At his
Yep.
trial, He didn't seem too concerned though, and spent most of his time having a laugh with his lawyers. Hey Capone, I gotta know, why are you so confident you're gonna win here? Well, Your Honor, because I'm an honest man with a big heart who's passionate about working for the good of the people. And also because I
that
threatened
really?
the entire jury's families. Luckily, at the last minute, the judge replaced the entire jury pool with a new one that Capone's men hadn't yet got to, and Capone was found guilty. He was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, the harshest penalty ever given to a tax evader.
Yep.
But even with Capone locked away, the violence in Chicago and other cities continued, and in response, the movement against Prohibition.
It is funny the fact that they couldn't get him on all the murder or on all the criminal activity, but tax evasion, that's a big no-no. You don't mess with the IRS. Even the Joker knows that. You've seen the clip.
Continued to grow, and the final nail in Prohibition's coffin came in 1929. After a decade of booming economic growth under 3 Republican presidents, the stock market plummeted, and America was thrown into the grips of the Great Depression.
The Great
It was
Depression.
an awful time. One out of every 5 workers, 15 million people, would lose their jobs. Half the nation's banks failed.
Absolute killer.
Temporary shantytowns were built for the broken homeless in public parks. Suddenly, very few people had time to care about Prohibition. Expensive enforcement of an unenforceable law didn't seem like that big of a priority when people were having their homes repossessed and losing their life savings. And many began to argue that repealing Prohibition would create vital jobs and tax revenue for the government. Yet President Hoover doubled down. Here's that report you asked for, sir. Gimme. Prohibition is great. Fantastic news. Sir, it says here Prohibition is great at undermining the rule of law in America. Miles, it says the word great. That means good. Now stop wasting my time! The public, increasingly shocked at the violence they saw in the streets, the corruption they saw.
They could have easily turned the economy around by repealing the 18th Amendment. But instead, what President Hoover did, or was President Hoover or the president after? I'm pretty sure it was Hoover, though. But instead of what they did, instead of repealing the 18th Amendment and allowing for the sale and production of alcohol and boosting the economy with that, they instead just tried to levy taxes on everything, and it just made worse and extended the length of the Great Depression. Or not taxes, but tariffs on everything. And that just made everything all worse.
On the government, the general disregard for the law, and now an economic calamity had enough. For his re-election, Hoover faced a Democratic candidate who promised to finally do something about Prohibition. Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Yep, Mr. Four-term himself.
As FDR made his campaign speeches promising to modify the Volstead Act, and Pauline Sabin, a lifelong Republican, along with her 1.5 million supporters, endorsed Roosevelt. And on Election Day, it was a landslide. Before FDR had even taken office, Republicans in Congress began the process of passing.
Imagine, like, a president being so popular that they win that many states today. It's never going to happen. Mostly because you can thank gerrymandering for that. But imagine.
The 21st Amendment to repeal Prohibition. One of FDR's first acts as president was to pass the Beer Permit Act, which made beer legal while the new amendment was being ratified. In 1933, with the passage of the 21st Amendment, Prohibition was finally over, and the people celebrated like they'd just won a world war. Bars and taverns were packed. The WCTU were inconsolable. Wayne Wheeler was dead. And the celebration, particularly in America's cities, was intense. Heading into the mid-1930s, the effects of Prohibition were clear to see. From now on, culture around drinking had changed, with men and women drinking together, not in saloons, but in bars and taverns. The crime syndicates that had been given so much power through Prohibition remained powerful as they moved on to other things.
Yep, that's pretty much how it works. Like, I mean, the cat's out of the, the cat's out of the box with that one. You're not gonna kill these organized crime places. You aren't going to kill organized crime. They're just going to move on to a new thing.
Remain dry, with Oklahoma only repealing its prohibition laws in 1959. To this day, there are still counties in America with some form of prohibition. So what did we learn today, kids? What's the big lesson here? What's the moral of this story that we can all take away and apply to our day-to-day lives?
What is it?
Maybe that you shouldn't force your own morals on others who don't share them? Maybe that if you tell Americans not to do something, that's the one thing they'll definitely do. Or maybe there is no lesson. Maybe we're all just a bunch of dumb, stinky idiots, and we're all doomed. The end.
Yep. So that was Prohibition. A lot of things today are still very, very applicable to how Prohibition was almost over 100 years ago. Prohibition was over 100 years ago. Think about that. It's 2026 now. Goodness. But yeah, you can see how things just really haven't gotten all that better, have they? But yeah, that was Prohibition. Let me know what you thought about that in the comments down below. And don't forget to hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and ding that bell so you know when I upload. It helps me in the algorithm. And as always, I will see you next time at the HQ. Bye-bye.